Welcome to Mad Marketing TV. My name is Jeff Ogden. Really excited about our guest today, Paul Gillin. Let's look at Paul Gillin. Paul, this is title of this episode is The Social B2B Marketer, with our special guest, Paul Gillin, who's a writer, a speaker, and a B2B social marketing strategist. He's a veteran technology journalist, and he's written 3 top-selling books about social media marketing. So, with that said, let's welcome Paul to the show today.
Hi, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you here, Paul. Yeah, really excited at having you on the show today. So,
I love this topic.
I've read, I think, all 3 of your books, so I'm really excited to, have you on and be able to talk to you about using social media in B2B today. So let's dive into it, Paul. Your most recent book, Social Marketing to the Business Customer, you talked a lot about using social media in B2B marketing. What do you consider the top ways that social impacts most in B2B sales and marketing today?
Well, Jeff, it's really about the depth of the conversation with the customer. You know, B2B companies were actually the earliest innovators in social media. If you go back to 2003, 2004, when no one had even heard of social media, companies like IBM and Microsoft had hundreds, even thousands of people blogging. And that's because they needed to have deep, engaged conversations with their customers. You know, it's not about flash and demo in B2B marketing. It's about sharing a lot of information. And social media, particularly blogging, early on was perfect for that kind of engaged conversation.
Thanks, Paul. That's great information. And, we really... I think blogging is very important. I've been personally writing a blog for over 5 years, and I consider that's very important. So what do you see as the biggest differences between selling to consumers in social media and businesses selling to other businesses using social media?
I brought along a slide that I'd like to share with you that illustrates some of these differences. We identified 6 for the book, and really, I was surprised actually when we were researching the book to uncover, to realize how different these different scenarios are. For example, B2B is a value-driven decision-making process, and I think that's very important. B2B decisions, almost all of them, fundamentally come down to value. That's often not the case in consumer decisions. I don't consider what the value of a diet soda is, or the value of a pizza, or the value of a pair of jeans. However, in B2B decisions, there is always a need for the decision to reflect the best value for the company, whether that be in revenues or cost saved or some other perception of value. So that's a big difference. Second one is group consensus. And in B2B decisions, there usually are multiple stakeholders involved. And research has shown that as the size of the decision increases, the number of people involved increases. Third is the bet business factor, the idea that companies B2B companies make decisions that have material influence on the success of their business. You know, when Federal Express chooses an engine maker to develop 1,500 hybrid engines for its trucks, that's a bet the business decision. Federal Express stands to lose a lot if it makes a bad decision. Don't see that very often in consumer scenarios. Fourth is long-term relationships. Generally, once companies, B2B scenarios, make decisions, they want to stay with those companies for a long time. And most of those relationships, they want to be few relationships with a lot of business being done. This is a term in B2B you might have heard called one throat to choke. The idea is that I'll give you a lot of business, but you better give me top quality customer service 24/7. So you have long-term relationships, and many relationships in B2B scenarios last 20 years or more. Don't see that very often in consumer markets. The audience is knowledgeable, engaged, and serious because the people who are making decisions often are engineers or may have PhDs on the customer side. They may know as much about the technology as the vendor. And finally, an intense need for information, not just before the sale, but also after in the customer support process and over the life of the relationship, a constant need for sharing and exchange of deep information about where the company is going, where the products are evolving, and how the relationship will continue to evolve.
Thanks, Paul. Those are some great insights into the world of B2B and how it's different than consumer. So if they were saying, Paul, you're the social media expert, what kind of tactics would you recommend that we use in our B2B marketing? What would you say to them?
I think the hardest thing for marketers to do in any scenario, not just B2B, is to stop talking. It's to shut up. Marketers are taught, they are trained to speak. That's what marketing has historically been about. But marketing now is becoming much more of a listening and feedback mechanism. It's much more conversational and iterative. I have another slide here to illustrate what I call flipping the funnel. B2B decisions have historically been driven by what we call the sales funnel, which you saw in the first slide. In the second slide, you see that funnel has really flipped. In the traditional funnel model, the customer had very little information and was brought into a process of education that ultimately, hopefully, resulted in a sale. Today, customers have self-organized into communities where they have already chosen to interact with each other. And marketers enter those communities only at the invitation of those customers. That's a very big difference in the landscape. So I think that the most important advice I'd have is you have to learn to listen and you have to learn to engage with people as a helpful source of advice. Today the question is not how can I sell, but how can I help? Because once you help, you build trust, and trust leads to business relationships. That's how business will be done in the future.
Great stuff, Paul. Yeah, I think you make some great points. I think listening is the key. And B2B marketing is all about earning trust. And I think you make a great point of flipping the funnel and doing things that build trust with prospective buyers. So I always come up with a takeaway for our show. So let's say, Paul, you're sitting down with the chief marketing officer, and he or she asks you, what are the key things that you want me to know right now? What are the takeaways that I should be aware of? What would you say?
Well, I would say, first of all, do not set out with a social media strategy. You don't need a social media strategy. You need a business strategy, and you need to understand how social media may relate to that. But too many companies right now are throwing away time and money by investing in social media channels that don't make sense for them. So start out with the idea of finding out how your customers want to engage with you, and in some cases that may be the golf course, and if that's the case, fine. If they want to use Twitter or LinkedIn, that's fine as well, but focus on the tools that are really going to work for you. I guess the third point I'd make is sweat the fundamentals, because your biggest upside is often not from your LinkedIn group or your Facebook fan page. It's having good search engine optimization. Now, search is probably still sending. For most B2B companies, search is still the digital source that sends them the most leads. So search engine optimization, blogging and email are still very effective tools. In fact, B2B marketers spent more on email this year than they've ever spent before. It's a very effective tool because it reaches that hallowed place, the inbox, where you have to get an invitation to enter. So I think you want to do the things, the stuff that we've been doing for 10 years, you want to do that right before you move on and try to engage in social media, where you can spend a lot of time and throw away a lot of money if you don't really know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's great advice, Paul. And I think, come up with a business plan and really figure out what you're trying to do. And one of my things is always fish where the fish are. Understand where your customers go and make sure you're there. So to wrap up, Paul, and I've really enjoyed having you on the show, how can our viewers learn more about you and social media and how to use it in their business? What would you recommend?
Well, there's so many sources out there, Jeff, and certainly your blog is an excellent source of B2B insight. My website is Gillin.com. My blog is paulgillin.com, and I tweet at @pgillin. So, in search for my name, I'm in just about every social venue you can imagine. So, I don't hide out very much. I do have all three of my books about social media actually have had a fairly heavy B2B component because that's what my background is, and it's what I understand best. I also recommend looking at the Social Media B2B website, which is an excellent site that Jeff Cohen and Kip Bodnar have put together. They've also got a book coming out on B2B social marketing coming out shortly. I certainly plan to read that, and I would look out for that as well. And finally, I would just say, do some searches and set up some RSS feeds and just start watching. One of the best sources, one of the best uses of my time every day, I try to spend at least an hour just going through my RSS reader where I've collected wisdom from RSS feeds from bloggers such as yourself. and that wisdom comes in, and I can spend an hour every morning and just get current on what's going on that day. There's so much free advice out there right now. It would be a crime not to take advantage of it.
So this has been a great session, Paul. We really enjoyed having you on the show today, and I hope everyone tunes in every week for great guests. Next week we have Steve Gershik from 28 Marketing, who will talk about B2B lead nurturing and scoring. So this is Jeff Ogden of Find New Customers, the host of Mad Marketing TV, and we'll see you next week.